Okay, so be aware that we have worked with one collection for a few weeks before the reading week. I mean, including the midterm that you did, which was the array list. So from Java, if I can tell you how collections are, what are the basic classes from where they come. So you have lists, you have maps, and then you have sets, right? So under list you have the array list that you're aware with. Under maps there is a hash map, there is a tree map, there is a sorted map, there are maps. And then under sets there is a tree set, there is a hash set, and so on, right? They're all collections, but their functionality is a little different. For example, an array list is just a collection of objects, and there is a sequence. So you'll say, I want to pick up the element from the first index, 0th index, which is first, second index, third index, and so on, right? Now in a map, as the name suggests, map simply means that you have key value pairs in your collection. So therefore it's called a map. You're mapping it, right? So basically, instead of single objects, you have a pair of objects at each as one collection, one element, right? So each element of a map is a combination of two, and this is called a key value pair because one acts like a key, like a primary key. Therefore it's called a key, by the help of which you either save a value or get a value, right? Now in a hash map, particularly in a hash map, because that's what we are doing today, this key value should be unique. So if I try to insert data, and they have to be again objects. So if I try to insert data 1 and say Anju, right? So maybe student IDs and their names. And if I again try to insert 1 and I give another name like NA for whatever, right? This will be replaced. Anju gets replaced by NA. So at any given time, the hash map will have a key associated with a value. The opposite isn't true. You could have the same value associated with more than one keys. So it's not the opposite way. So it's the key which is unique, but the unique doesn't say you won't be able to add another of the same nature. All it does is it just replaces it. So before replacing it, you say, so what do I do? You can always say, does it contains that key? You can always find out, does it contain that key? And maybe you don't want to use that key. Okay, so there are ways of getting around, but as per se, it's called a map because there is a mapping between the key and the value. So for every key, there is a value. Though the opposite isn't true, same values may have, like there could be a key 1 mapped to 1, there could be a key 2 also mapped to 1. So the values could be the same. The values could be the same, but the key cannot be same. So if you try to do an insertion, that basically like in array list, you have an add to add an element, get I to get an element. Similarly, you have here put and get, right? And on the third side, so you have lists of which you've done array list. Of the maps, I'll do a hash map. But keep in mind, once you know how to use a collection, it's not a big deal. You should be able to use another map like a tree map, right? Which is a little different. I'll tell you how the tree map works, but it's still a mapping. It still has key value pairs. So something that you have implemented as a hash map can be very quickly converted into a tree map. And then the third set of collections are grouped under sets. A set is basically, again, a collection of elements, right? These could again be any objects. The order isn't important. It's just a collection, and each element of the set has to be unique. You can't repeat. Like mathematic set in math is the same thing. Every element can only occur once, right? So they come handy, or they are useful in different situations, and you will see such a situation today. Where do I use a hash map? Why did I use a hash set, and so on? And the hierarchy is, I mean, only knowing them necessarily may not help. You will have to do some bit of homework in reading their documentation, and maybe the documentation of the parent class, and maybe the documentation of the interface, and so on, right? And when you read the documentation, not everything may make sense. They may be talking about something called synchronized, and it is not synchronized and stuff like that. If you can get a knack of it, good. If not, don't over stress about it, because I mean, there are so many concepts in Java which are quite advanced, and they only make sense, or you can kind of learn about them only when you implement them. So theoretically, it seems okay, but it's when practically you try to do something, that's when they make more sense. Okay. So today's example is basically about a tech support system. It's about a tech support system. So I'm trying to create a tech support system which is not manual, it's all automated, right? So what happens in an automated, if you've they're quite irritating sometimes, but if you've kind of used an automated system, you can call them and it says, okay, give me your question. So on the back end, I mean, I'm using a hash map, but of course in the back end, they have a database that is full of these answers, or artificial intelligence has been used to create these answers. So a question is asked. So the user says something like, you know what, my system has crashed, or I'm having problems with installing this software, and so on. And it tries to look in the database, match your question. Now, a question cannot be matched, like Google can match a question. What it does, it picks up words from that question and tries to look in its database to find keywords that match. And depending upon those matches, it gives you an answer. What does it do? It gives you all the websites where it matches whatever question you've given. So same kind of concept. So a tech support system, you call in, you say, I am having problems, this is what it is. It tries to go and look into its database. We'll use a hash map, because what do we have? Why am I using a hash map? In that hash map, there will be some keywords here, something like, say, crash, which will have an answer to it, right? Something like maybe Linux, about Windows, about Mac, or something else that can occur, like internet speed, whatever, right? So with each word will be associated a answer that the automated system will give back to the user, right? And it's all automated. So you will notice that in this class, in this example that I'm doing, though I've said no printing and no asking of inputs in classes, I have to do it here. So there will be a class which I'll use a simplest scanner. I just stuck to scanner. I could have used dialog boxes and whatever. I'll use a scanner class. You will give an input. So you'll put in a question like, I'm having problems with installing, I don't know, Eclipse maybe. So you've called their center, and that's what you're doing. So they'll kind of look for the words like problems. I mean, and all these are not so useful words. And you can eliminate them if you like, but it will pick up words and it will search its database. For me, it will be a hash map. It will search that for that particular word, and the answer that it has stored, or the value that it has stored for that particular word, it will spit it out. Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it won't make sense at all. Then it may happen that the question that you're asking has no relevance at all. It has nothing to do with tech support system. Basically, I don't know, something like how are you doing or something, which has nothing to do with a problem at all. In that case, we can create some random answers. So I'll use the random class just to create some default responses required. So I'm not going to comment anything. I'll just kind of write it. I'll speak as I do it. And then again, I already have the code commented and everything. I'll place it on Blackboard so that you can see the comments as to what we are doing, right? So this will kind of give you an idea of another collection called hash map, and also a set, and I'll use a hash set again. It really doesn't matter. But what I'm trying to stress is that this is not the end. It's just the beginning. You did a list. You just did an array list. But then it doesn't matter what you're using. With each class in Java are associated methods, and you have to know how to use those methods. That's what is important. So I'm just giving you some background, and I'm hoping that with this background, and again, looking at classes, descriptions, Java documentation, and looking at methods, you should be able to read about those methods and use what it is. So that if need be, in the final exam, if you see, oh, do I know how to use a tree map, for example, or do I know how to use a tree set or a sorted map? You should know that, oh, it's not that difficult. This is all it means. Okay. The tree is a little different. Tree is a little different data structure. And I think in Java, the sorted tree, for example, could be saving something like this. This is called a binary search tree. So you have data, right? Anything less than 10 goes to its left child, and anything greater than 10 goes to its right. So it stores the data in such a way that the access of these elements that you are saving is quick. And that's the whole thing. That's the most important thing. Whenever you want to access data, you should choose a data structure. These are all data structures, right? Array list, hash maps are structures because you're saving data into it. The data structure that you use should be efficient in searching and retrieving data, right? So this tree, the tree map kind of saves the data in such a way that you could get a sorted list out of it. If you are looking for something like 20, it knows, oh, my root is 10. This is where I begin. I don't even have to look at half my elements because 20 is greater than 10. So there are some advantages, definitely. So each collection will have its own advantages. It will be more well suited to a particular application than something else, right? So you just have to be aware that Java has some collections, and we've done an array list. I'm doing a hash map, a hash set. There is a tree map, sorted map. And again, the best way to learn a little about them is to read a little literature, right? So if I'm doing hash map today, I would highly recommend that you read about it, and not only about it, maybe its parent, and it talks about the map interface. Read a little about it, right? Just so that you have an idea of what it is. Okay. So as I said, I'll start a project from scratch. To save time, I'll not put in any comments or anything because I've already done that, and I'll post it on Blackboard once I'm done with my class today. So my aim is that I'm going to create 3 classes today. One class that will read input from the user, right? Which is basically for input. The other class, which will save all my responses and will give me the right response. And the support system, which will kind of do this job, read here, call the responder, give the answer, and so on. So you will notice that for the first time, I'm going to do reading and writing in classes. But that's the nature of this application, right? It is a automatic tech support system. So it needs to ask questions and it needs to give answers. So therefore, we are going that route. Though I've always said no printing and no reading in answers. Anything that has to be given is given with parameters in as input parameters to methods, and anything that has to be given out is given through return values. But just because the nature of the system is such that I'll have to use scanners or reading input and system out printlns for my output. Okay. Maybe there's a way of changing its structure, but that's how I am doing it. So I'm not going against of what I've been saying. It's just the nature of the application. So let's create a new project. You can call it whatever you like. I'm going to call it tech support system just because that's what I have in my mind. And the rest, it depends upon whatever you're using, right? And create a package under it. You can always use the default package, but it is not recommended. It is recommended that you always create a package so that it's one, organization, and two, definitely more for uniqueness also, that it just belongs here. So if you want to go off what I've been going, you don't have to. You can form the same kind of hierarchy, or just if it's sometimes when it's on my laptop, I don't even bother to do this. I just give it a name so that it's not in the default package. That's all I do. Right? So you can call it whatever you like. I have just called it tech support system, all in lowercase, keeping with the norm of how packages are named in Java. Right? The CS and all that is just a hierarchy kind of concept. Okay, so what you will notice is you have, I don't know, IntelliJ there must be some way of doing it in IntelliJ also. But now I'll start creating classes in my project. So I'll start with the first one. I'm going to call it input reader. So if you want to keep with me or whatever will come on Blackboard, you can follow these names. Otherwise, whatever you wish will do. So it's just called an input reader because it's something that is reading your input. Okay. Right. So that's the main aim of the class. So I'll just put the aim here so that you know what it is. But as I said, I'll just kind of fill this afterwards. So this class basically accepts input and splits it into a set of words. The set necessarily doesn't mean sets as in Java, but into a collection of words if you want to put it that way. I just say set because then the only one word goes in one at a time, right? As I was reading about the random class yesterday, in the literature it said instead of using the random from the java.util, it is recommended that you use the secure random class that is more for security purposes. Anywhere where you want more security, when you want to create keys or whatever that are more secure and not easy to break, use the secure random. There wasn't much difference because the secure random is extending from the random class, but still the algorithm, I think, behind the scenes is something that doesn't create easy random numbers, is what I say. So I was doing random, but of course, all I did was if I change it to secure random, it would work. So just so that you know that, I could have used it, but my application is not a kind of a secured application in the sense they're secure. For me, I'm only choosing random to choose one of the answers from my set. So I kind of stuck with it. But while I was reading it yesterday, just to see if I could use something else or something different, I found that. And I think it is a Java 1.8 inclusion, the secure random belongs to the java.security, or I could be wrong, 1.6, but something that it just came up. I don't know, was it, I think it was Eclipse that said something about it, and I went and looked as to what did it mean. Why was it prompting? Something to do with what I saw. Okay, so basically this class accepts input. So basically it is taking some input from the user. So if it needs some input from the user, just to keep it simple, and hoping that most of you have seen it at least in your previous course, because that's the minimum that you would you would use import scanner, right? So just import that file. So I'm just using the scanner class, and as you know, the scanner class, an object of the scanner class lets you read input from your terminal. That's what it does. So I could have used dialog boxes, but it wasn't a big deal. That's not the big deal in here. So basically, let's create your constructor. So that's the only instance variable that I need here. So name of the constructor, same as the name of the class. Now this one, it may or it may not, but my constructor doesn't take any parameters, because if you notice, I don't have any instance variables. I only have an instance variable of type scanner, whose aim will be to kind of read input, right? So it will basically be nothing except that you will initialize your scanner and link it to your input stream, right? You can always do this right where you declare it. Here it will be null if you don't give it anything. Remember, by default, every object is null. You could do this new right here. It's just not the norm in Java. It's just not done where the variables are declared. Like in any other languages, if you're familiar with C++, for example, it's very common, or Pascal or whatever. You just do it where you declare your variables, right? With instance variables, the concept is instance variables just tells what the variables are, and the constructor will do the job of initializing those variables, because when you create an object you call the constructor, that's where you initialize your instance variables. So it's not wrong. Theoretically you could just say is equal to and do a new scanner right here, and it's not wrong. There's nothing wrong in it. I mean, syntactically, compilation wise, there is nothing wrong in it. It's just how it is, and therefore I would prefer you to do it this way. I mean, you just follow the norms, because if you have to in the long run program in Java, which hopefully you will do, you just know what is accepted in the industry. Okay, so basically this method, this class has one method that will take the input from the user and then just split it. A very simple one. You will read from the user till end of line, and then you will use the split method of the string class to split it on blanks. That's usually how you separate your words, and that's the whole process of it. And then take those words and I'll put them in a set and show you how to do that, right? Again, just simple if you understand what we're doing. So I'll put in the comments afterwards, okay? And again, while I was doing it, I did have a couple of, sometimes you'll get warnings or whatever, you have to put an @suppress warning. So don't, I mean, I'll tell you when things can happen, just so that you know. Okay, so this method is returning a hash set, right? This method is returning a hash set, and the type of element in this hash set are of type string. And we all know what strings is, right? And the method is called whatever you like. I'm going to call it get input. So of course it will have, you'll have to import it. Okay, right? So that red squiggly you can ignore for a minute. It's just saying it doesn't return anything. Okay, so your aim will be to ask for input from the user using your scanner object, which hopefully we are all aware of. So whatever you like and however you want to do it, you can create a string variable. I'm just calling it input line. What shall I do? We need some prompts, right? Okay, so let's do something like system.out.println, just so that the user knows an input is being asked. You can choose whatever you like. Okay, into that input line now, use your reader object to get some input. And there are a few methods, of which, of course, I'm sure you've used some. I'll stick to next line, right? Because that's the easiest one to go. What does it do? It takes all input till you press the enter key. That's what next line does, right? I'm sure you've done scanners before. Now, I want to take this string variable and split it into words. And fortunately, there is a split method in the string class. So how does it work? If you haven't seen it before, how does it work? If you go to Java API, of course, I'll just say string class. Even 7 will do and even 8 will do, doesn't matter. There's not much difference between the two, at least in the string class. And of course, you can always, if you want it, you can always change it to 8. Right? There is a split method here. So just look at it. What does it return and what do we need to save it? So the method is called split. I mean, it's not as if you kind of look for it, how to split or how to break a string, you'll get it very quickly. LMNOPQRS, come on, where are you? Here. So there is a, oh, does it come from, is it coming from some, if it's not coming from here, does it come from its toString, PQRST starts, oh, there it is, right? Oh, I'll use this one. You can use the other one also, and they're kind of working on regular expressions, but it's not a big deal, right? The regular expression for us is not too tough to understand here. It says splits this string around matches of the given regular expression. And remember, we've talked a little about regular expressions, but regular expressions is something that's not very tough, but does require some reading and understanding. For me, it's very simple that if I want to break, I just want to break it on blank, right? That's how I want to split my string. So for me, the regular expression would be just the blank. That's all I need. So if you have more than one blanks, like two words are separated by more than one blanks, then you just have empty words, right? You just have empty words. But if you put it in a hash set, then those empty words are only stored once. One empty word will be stored, which is not a bad one, which you can improve to whatever level you want. Oh, it says have been installed successfully. Okay. Okay, so let's try to split it. Oh, what I was trying to show you here was the return type. It gives you back an array of strings, right? Notice how does it, when it splits it into words, words basically mean a collection of strings, and that's what we want on the return type. So what I'm going to do is, so look at what the return type is and create a variable of the same kind to put it. That's all you need, right? So every method will need parameters, will return something. You have to know what parameters it needs and you know what to return. And away you go. You just have to call it the right way. So let's take a word array. You can call it whatever you like. Take your input line and split it. Notice there is a split method and split it on a blank. That's your regular expression. We're basically saying split it on a blank. I chose to do that because that's how usually our sentences are. Like going by English sentences, we separate our words by a blank, right? So what it will do is it will split, and notice I haven't given the size. I haven't given anything in my square brackets. Why? Because I'm assigning it a value. If this was just a declaration, then you would have to say how many, but when I assign something to it, it will automatically, however number of words it has, it will automatically create the array of that particular size. And there you are, you have it. Now that looks good enough. I've converted it into an array, but now my aim is that I have to return this. So there are two options. I can return the whole array. I can just return the array, right? I have an array of words. But if I could only keep each word once maybe in a collection, that would be good. So all I have to do is, if I can, and you can, if you can take this array and convert it into a set, then my job is done. So I'll show you two ways of doing it. Both are correct. Choose whatever you like. I did it the common way that I do, and then I used the other one, and it said you had to suppress some warnings. I don't know, maybe it was deprecated or something. I don't remember. So I'll give you both ways. They're both syntactically correct. Whatever makes sense to you. One is an easy one, of course, but the other one is just a loop. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a hash set now. Right, again, a set is basically a collection of elements, right, of objects. So it's not a key value pair, it's just an element. But what kind of hash set do you need? Definitely of type string, because what's coming out of the word array is of type strings. So you have to know what kind do I need. Let's just call them words. And, oh, let me create it first. And now 1.7 onwards, I think 1.7, it was not in 1.6 as far as I remember. And Matthew, I think, pointed this out to me in some time, that you don't have to mention in the angular brackets, you don't have to mention the type again. And you don't have to now. Till 1.6 you had to, right? So that is what I was just doing. I didn't realize it. But now in 7 and 8, you don't have to. So you can leave it alone.
It's same for all the collections?
All the collections. It's same for all the collections. Doesn't matter. whether it's an array list, whether it's a hash map, it's a map or it's a set, a list, map or set. All collections, as long as you have declared it on the left hand side, the type, in the new you don't have to declare it on the right hand side, which is, I mean, it's just easy, right? Like, okay, so now what I'll do is I'll use a for each loop, right? And I'll give you the other way also. But anyway, I'll use a for each loop, pick up one word at a time from my word array, which you can do. Remember, an array is also a collection. You can use a for each loop in your collection. That's all you have to do. And all we will do is, it's easy. Hash set is very similar to, what did I call it? Words. You can actually you can convert a collection into another collection as long as it is valid. You can even do that. I mean, an array is also a collection. There's nothing wrong in that at all. And I'll show you how you can do that. And add that word. Okay, that's all it does. So why did I convert from an array to a set? Because a hash set has unique elements.
Set can't contain
same words. Same words is my understanding, but I'm sure I'm right. But you know what? Before I say something, let me open its help. Yeah, I think it removes it. That's the whole concept of it. So you can look at the interface if you like, but even this will tell us. So it does, because I'm using a hash set, it has to do something with hash mapping and so on, but that's not so important. So, and again, remember, there is no guarantee of any order in a set. It's just a collection. So there is not the first element, the second element, and so on. It does permit the null element, and so does a hash map. Though it is odd, in a hash map you can have a key null, a null key, right? You can have that. So therefore you have to be a little careful, and it can also map to a null element. You can have null as value. So these are small things that when you need it, it will come. And they talk about some capacity and loading factor also. So these are more theoretical kind of things. Therefore, I've told you to read the structure, to read the document. But somewhere I'm sure, and again talks about threading and everything, and you can synchronize it. So a little more wording, but somewhere I'm almost positive. So this is what it is implementing, this set. But, and of course it's a long one. So notice there is a tree set also. There is a tree map also. So let's look at its add method. That will tell us. See, if the element is not already present, it will add the specified element to the set. Right, so it says more formally adds the specified element to the set if the set contains no element E2 such that E is equal to null and E1 is equal to E2. So it has unique elements. So that kind of takes care of why do I need to convert from an array to a set? I mean, if your sentence contains the same word and things like the and things like this, which you can of course ignore, in the sense that you can even do this. You can say, oh, this is my set and I only want to have what remains. We can do that too, but here the main aim is that it does that. If this set already contains the element, the call leaves the set unchanged and returns a value false. So therefore it is a collection of unique elements. So it's somewhere in the literature it will be mentioned, but the add method definitely clarifies it for you. Right? So somewhere they should say something about it, either in this or in the interface, but you'll read it somewhere. Okay, but this is good that add is saying it, so now you know that it only contains individual unique elements. Okay, so having said that, so what I've done is I've basically, using a for each loop, I've taken one word at a time from the array and I've added it to my hash set. Right now, just for your information, just because I was trying to see if something else was available when I saw that all collection, this can also be done. You can take your words, which is your hash set, and you have to do a cast just because it's coming from the arrays class. So this is casting, and this is where I got that warning thing, and I had to kind of say what. So from the arrays static method, okay. Which of course seems much simple. So behind the scenes, it is doing the same thing, of course, right? It is doing the same thing. But when I brought my mouse over, it said something like unchecked cast from list true hash set, and it said add this warning. And kind of I said I've already casted it into a hash set, but it still gave this warning. And if you see something like this, all you have to do is you have to add this add suppress warnings unchecked to get input. So here I was a little bit, I mean, I have to read more about it, but if you bring your mouse over it and see what the as list method is in the arrays class, maybe it will give you a little more. But so it's saying that you're trying to cast, so it's telling me you're trying to cast a list into a set. Is that okay? Something like that. If you're trying to cast a bigger number into a smaller box, and it says in some languages, you know what you're doing. So that's what that warning is about. And if it comes, I mean, it does come, as you see, it does come. So you can use either. You can use, what do I have here? Oh, that same one. Okay, so if you want to use, there's nothing wrong in it. I mean, there's nothing wrong in using it. And I knew there was something like this in the arrays class, so I tried it out. But it said this warning, and all you have to do is, if you do this, notice how it will put this just at the head of your method. It just puts it here. It says suppress warnings unchecked. So I'm not too comfortable till I read a little more about it. So I said, okay, I won't use this. I'll just use a for each loop.
What this does?
It just suppresses this warning. The yellow squiggly that you were seeing, it just suppresses the warning.
This line of code?
No, not, oh, this line of code. This line of code is exactly doing what this for loop is doing. It is taking each word of your word array, each element of your word array, and putting it into the hash set. Putting it into the hash set.
Can't you just use the add all method?
Yeah,
and then give you as list inside that?
Okay, come again. Which one are you, where are you telling me to use it?
Do words dot add all.
Oh, okay. So just go, okay.
Yeah.
So words dot add all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, add all collection, right?
Yeah. And then you put the as list word.
And
word
just
array.
the whole thing array.
Yeah.
Does it still say something, or is it okay there? Oh, now that the warning is on, let me kind of maybe comment this out and see if it says something here. No, it's not. So maybe there, and which is strange, right? But maybe the add all has already taken care of it. I mean, it has already, it knows that you're converting an array into a list and putting it. Yeah.
They want to add all method in the collection.
Collections, yeah, yeah. And we looked at it when I was doing add. I said you could add a whole list, you could convert it. Yeah, that would work too. This I had just done sometime before, like I had done it once and I kind of looked it up. I didn't even think about add all, but yeah, instead of a for loop, all you do is an add all. And add all, I'm sure, will take care of your. I'm positive it will. Of unique elements.
Actually, I guess at the back end, we'll just add.
It will just use add is my thinking, right? What else can it do? Like at the back end, it is going to use add. So I'm assuming, I mean, it can't happen that one will do something and the other won't do something. That cannot happen. So add all will work, should work. I mean, will work. So there should be one add all. Let's double check, but you're right. Behind the scenes, all these methods do something that you would otherwise do on your own. So where was this coming from? This was, okay, so this was hash set, and this should be coming from here, from the set one. Yep, if they're already not present. Yep, should be. Yep, that will be much easier. So I don't know why I was getting this warning, and I didn't, I mean, as I said, I put that because that's what it was telling me, Eclipse, but I have to go and look at it, what it means, but definitely, or any three will do. So I think line number 38 would be the best way of doing it, because one, it's not giving us any warnings at all, and two, it's just add all, it makes sense. But here, just to let you know, like the array list, the set method also has an add, and there were not many. Did you notice there were not many methods? Though of course it will inherit methods from its parents, and all the inherited methods are listed down. If you've paid attention to Java documentation, it lists them down. The methods that it inherits also is listed somewhere at the bottom, that these methods have been inherited. Right? So definitely look at, I mean, it has all known implementing classes and so on. So definite all known sub interfaces and super. So I'm sure that it will work. So here, always in Java documentation, you will always notice that some methods are inherited from where it has been the inheritance tree, from its inheritance tree. And it's always a good idea to go and look, is there something available there? So here it's a small one. There's hardly anything. And you can always create an iterator on a set, like you can create an iterator on a list. So they're very kind of similar because they're all collections. They just differ in where to use what, you know, I mean, which one will be a better collection to be used in a definite application. So if you're if for you it is important that this is element number 1, then 2, and so on, then array list would be better. Then set will not be better. If it really doesn't matter, all you need is a collection, unique collection, then set will be okay. If you need to have a key value mapping, then definitely you can't use an array list, because then in your mind the mapping is 0, 1, 2, and so on. That's the only mapping you have in your head. If you can keep that mapping in a map, why not? So these are just collections that are a little different in their nature, but on the whole, they're just collections. So depending upon what is required, you can use that. And always make it a point that looking at the methods, you also look at methods that have come from its inherited classes. It always works. Like, it's better. Of course, the object one we already know, but I wouldn't know off my head what's in abstract set or abstract collection or set. I mean, object we still, just because we use it so many times. Okay, having come back, so choose whatever, right? Either they're all doing the same job. And I think add all is not a bad idea at all, because it says add, so it kind of makes sense. It's adding it, and then all you are doing is you're converting the list. So the arrays, you have to convert this array into a list, and that's what this method as list does. That's what this method as list does. So there is something, you see how it says add, save, variable arguments, and so on. So I think it has to do something with that when it gives me that warning. So whatever you choose, whatever makes sense to you. I mean, I don't want to leave all 3 here because I don't want to do it 3 times, but whatever makes sense. Okay. So that's how you've taken an input from the user, just a simple scanner, getting the next line, splitting it on blanks, and then putting it into a set so that you have a unique collection of words. Right. Another point that I would definitely like to do here is if we can remove the common words like the, and stuff like that. That would be definitely better, because who wants to look for the in a database, for example? You know what I mean? So maybe those punctuation, those common words that occur in English or anything to do with which makes no sense, you can remove them, and that would be something additional you could do here. Right. So, and I'm sure we can do it if we have this set, and then we have another set in which we put those words, the, and whatever, and so on, and then kind of subtract this sets, we should get our set of words, is my thinking, logically, right? And I'm sure it can be done. I just didn't do it. I didn't have the time to do it. For me, as I said, I wanted to do one complete example in class so that you've seen it. And hoping the Monday section will also look at it. With them, I won't do it, but I'll just show them to it, because I want you to be aware that there are other collections that are available, because I'm thinking something in terms of this in my final exam, right? Something that you can use, because you've given enough of that array list kind of logical stuff to me. Okay, so that's your input reader, right? So as we've never read anything in a class, like we've never taken input from the user in a class, but this class nature is such that it needs to take input from the user. It's an automated like talking system. I say something, the answer comes, and so on. So what else can I do? I thought I would not do it, and then everything was in the tester then the whole concept was lost. It's not a tech support system then. You know what I mean? If it's a tech support system, it should have a way of taking input and giving output. So I tried doing that, and then I have that version also. It wasn't too impressive. Okay, so let's create. So this is compiling. As you know, we don't have any errors. Let's create another class now, and this is the class which we'll call responder, or respond, or whatever you want to like. And again, I'll keep to what I have on Blackboard. I think I called it responder. I will put it on Blackboard. I just didn't want to. Yep, it is called responder. Right, and the main aim of this class is this. And it has, I mean, I'll put it. So what it does, it, as the name suggests, responder responds to your request. So this is what it does. It takes that set of input that will come from the input array, and of course the system will pass it. So the system will first call the input reader, like a tester, like your application will first call the input reader, will get the input, and then will pass it to the responder. The responder may print something on the screen. I again kept to printer because I tried doing not, and it kind of became very complicated and needed more time. And I thought I just have these 3 hours to finish it off. So this responder will take that input as the set, will go through its database. For us, this is not a database. We'll have a hash set, and it will search for that word in the set, find its corresponding value, and it will return it to you, right? So when it returns it, it just picks up, I mean, assuming that this hash set was created with good positive answers, I mean, making sense, that's what it will do. The case may arise that your database doesn't have an answer or my hash set doesn't have an answer, the word is not present. What I thought in that case, I would just create some random answer. Like, so I created an array of default or a array list of default responses, and I said randomly give them away. Of course, when you start working on it, you can't assume that and give random answers, but there has to be a point where you'll have to say, okay, this is all I can be done. Right? So you can think of all possible. And this is what artificial intelligence is about. Right? So you ask questions of the artificial intelligent guy, and there is a point where then you can do nothing. If you've tried Siri on your iPhones, right? Same kind of concept. It's the same concept. It's artificial intelligence. Okay, so instead of using a database and connecting to a database and all that, hopefully, which I'm hoping you will see in your advanced course, I'm going to put it in a hash set. Okay, and I'll put a few responses, and again, more I'll put on Blackboard just because it will take more work. Okay, so let's look at the instance variables that are required for my responder. So I'll definitely need, as I said, I'll definitely need a hash set. And with the hash set, we need two types, right? Why? Because each hash set is a key value pair. And so what I'm going to do, just because that's what I need, my key will also be a string and my value will also be a string, right? I'm just calling it response map. I mean, I don't have to say map with it, but right? And of course, oh, not hash. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hash map. Okay, so let's import it, right? So my map is simply, as I said, a key value collection. And the keys have to be unique. You can always check if a particular key is present. A key can have a null value. So if the result is null, you are looking for something and the result is null, it doesn't necessarily mean that the key is not present. It may mean that the value for that key is equal to null. So you just have to use the right method. So before simply getting something and saying, oh, the return value is null, it does not exist, you have to just check, is there a key there? And if you get null, even afterwards, that means the value associated with that key is null, right? So again, just a little bit of literature wherever you need. So whenever you work with something, you'll have to kind of find out how it behaves so that you know how to use its methods. Okay, so that's the hash map that I'll keep, and this will keep my responses. To keep my default responses, because I don't need a lot. I mean, I don't need anything. It's just default, right? I'm going to use an array list. Again, this array list will be of type string. And you can call it whatever. I have chosen to call it default responses. Right, so again, just include so the hash map will keep the logical words and their responses, like whatever you can think of. And if it is not present, you just can't keep quiet. The automated system does come back with something. So in that case, it will just pick up something randomly from this array list, right? So I need a oh, forgot my private. Just create some random number, which we'll do, and we'll just call it random generator. And for this, you will again have to do the java.util. So somewhere when I was doing this, I think in the literature about random, they mentioned something about, so there is a math random also. Hopefully you're aware of that. Yeah, but there was something in the literature which said something about a secure random class, and that kind of made me think what it was, and therefore I looked it up. But there is a secure random class also that comes from, there it is. Consider instead using secure random to get a cryptographically. So it's more to do with security where it's important, right? For me, it was not a big deal, but I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of looked at it, and it told you about being a secure random. And I mean, it would be a little different in the sense of how it creates your random number and so on. But just so that you know, it is available, right? There is a secure random class also, which comes from a java.security package. I was looking it for in util, but of course the security is coming from the random. So just so that you know, and this again came not from out of the blue. When I read its literature, there is where I've found it. So you can, for me, it is okay. Like, I just need to create a random number, not a big deal at all. And it's not important to have a cryptographically secure random number. So I stuck with this. But again, if you need to and if you want to try something else, you're most welcome. Okay, so these are the 3 variables that I will need, 3 instance variables that I will need. So let's create the responder, and the usual that we will do in the responder is initialize my hash maps, right? So take your response map. Remember, if you don't do it, then by default they are null and you can't do anything with them, like they don't exist. They're not defined. So you can leave this empty now, like you don't have to write anything. You could if you like, but you can if you, so that's again, it's just 7 onwards. And I think therefore I'm in the habit of writing it. It comes from old habit, right? So you can just say it's a hash map. And if you wanted to, all you will have to say here is string, comma, string, if you want to. And then of course your default responses, you've done that a number of times. You go new array list. And again, here, even in this collection, you can just leave it empty. Oops, you can leave it empty. Right now, as part of my constructor itself, as soon as I create a responder object, I definitely want to fill up my hash map and fill up my responses. I'm going to call a method called fill response map, which is just a method. It could be just a private method, and I'll just say fill default responses. And then remember, for the random generator again, I need, why isn't it helping me today? You just have to call new random. You can give it a seed if you like. And again, it is not so important for my purpose. I just went with the normal new random. You do know that these are pseudo random numbers, right? The random numbers that are created are pseudo random numbers. Like if you run the same, if you have 2 and you seed them with the same number and you just call it next int or whatever, they will create the same random numbers. Because it's all like, it's a machine, right? And who's giving it instructions is us. And if human, we can create random numbers, like, you know what I mean? Like, so the algorithm that is written, and maybe that is maybe a little different from secure random. I didn't go through all its literature, but they're all pseudo random numbers. It's a machine. It can only create something. You know what I mean? Like, and it is still a repetitive machine. That's all it is. Okay, so let's now complete. So don't worry about the red squigglies there, just because we haven't written those methods, right? Okay, I'm going to, before I fill them up, because that's a tedious job, and I'll kind of fill up a couple and then I'll leave it alone, okay? I'm going to write a generate response method, whose basic generate response method. That will basically do what? It will look through the words that you give it. Here I'll have to, because I'm doing it for the first time. Just call it whatever you like. I'm sticking to words. So it will take a hash set of words, right? And then it will look in the response map to find its partner. If it cannot find it there, then we'll pick up a default response from the array list and return it. That's why it's called generate response. I mean, you could call it anything you like, but I have called it response. So what does it do? This is what it does. It picks up each word. So again, maybe we'll find something better then. Maybe we'll find something better. But you know what? It has to go through. Okay. Okay, so pick up one word at a time. But do I need to? Yeah, maybe it doesn't find something for the first word, then it has to look for the second and third. Okay, yeah, I was thinking maybe just pick up one word, but doesn't necessarily. So you can take a local variable or do it here, wherever you like it. Whatever makes sense to you. I usually like to put my local variables at the top, at the head, but you know it's not a. Okay, so go and look in your response map. Right, oops. Go and look in your response map and get the corresponding value for this word. As simple as that. So there is a method get that will go look for the word, find its value, and get it back to you. Its corresponding partner is called put, for your information. Right, so we have a get and a put. I'll just use put to first. I mean, I'll use it in my filling up, but I mean, otherwise just for your information. So again, look at what get and word put do and how, as I said, they can return a null, and a key can have a null value, a key itself can be null. Some collections allow that too. So kind of read about it depending upon what you're doing. For, as I said, I'm going it very simple. I'm keeping it very simple, but of course you have to read the class. You have to understand how the class works before you use it. So whatever you can, and if it doesn't make sense, ask, right? And it's not very tough. Yes, Michael.
Actually, can you just reiterate for me what your expression means?
What this expression means?
Yeah.
Okay, it will go to this hash map called response map. It's a hash map, right? And in the hash map are key value pairs, a key, a value, a key, a value. And these keys are nothing but words that may mean something. Like if it is a tech support system, I'll put a key called crash, and I'll have a message like, oh, when did your system crash, or whatever, some kind of message comes back, right? I'll put the word Linux, and if he says I have a Linux system, I'll say something like something related to Linux. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's all I'm doing. So what this does is it will go to this response map in which I will save this. It will try to get get, of course, can return you null also. It will try to get the value corresponding to this word. That's all it does. And once it has it, what does it do?
So the for statement looks at the word and
just matches.
Values.
Yes. And you notice, as it may happen that I have a word like, I have a sentence like, I am facing problems with. So I is useless. So it will ignore the I, ignore the am, ignore the facing. When it comes to the word problems, it will find a match here and it will give you the return. It will give you the answer. Okay. Right? So the for each loop just goes through each one of them. As soon as it finds a word that makes sense and it has a response for it, it returns it. Okay. Right? And that's how it does. And what happens if it cannot find a word in its database, then it will just pick up one response from the default array list and return it back. It has to get you something back, right? So if we do not have a response, then all we'll have to do is we'll have to kind of randomly pick up an answer from a random defaults and do it. So if you can't think of anything, I'm going to write this method. I'm going to return pick default response. Yeah, that's going to be a method that all that method will do. I'll write it in a minute. All that method will do is it will go to that array list of default answers, randomly pick an answer. That's what it will do. Okay, so we'll fill it up in a minute just because that's more work. Let's do this method first. So this is a pub, and you know what? Yep. And I'm thinking, so generate response definitely has to be a public method, but the fillings up I can make as private methods, and I can even make pick default response as a private method because it's not to be needed outside the class anyway, right? So let's make that method I think I copied it, but anyway, let's make that method a private method. There it is, right? And what does it basically do is, when your brain works faster than your hands, then you mess up. Okay, what does this basically do is it will generate a random number and then pick up a default response. That's all it does, right? Okay, so let's do that. What was it called? Random generator.
Now this random, you can give it like a delimiter field, right? If I remember correctly, the random class has a function in it.
Yes, next int or something. Yeah.
You can say delimiter 0, delimiter 5 or something.
Oh, you're talking about math random, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. Math random, I think, takes two, or maybe even the random class has that constructor. But I just use the constructor that created a random generator, and I'll use a method next int. It will give me a value int between 0 to array list size -1.
Oh.
Yeah, right. But I think what you're talking was in the math random, but maybe here also, I'm not so sure. I don't remember it off my head, but it's not.
Been a while since I know.
Yeah, I mean random. I use it really easy random. So there are definitely two constructors, one without and one seeding it.
Oh.
And I'll use the next int method or something, whatever it is called. Next boolean, next byte, next int. There it is. Returns the next pseudo number uniformly distributed int value from this random number generator sequence.
But that doesn't take.
Yeah, that doesn't take a parameter. There is a next int with a bound. There is a next int with the bound, uniformly between 0 and the specified value exclusive. So that will work for me. I'll use the size of the array list, and it will go from 0 to size -1, and I'm safe, right? So I'll use this one, the next int with the bound. Okay, so let's come back. So where were we? Okay, so take your random number and generate a random number and random number generator. What do I want? I need a next int. Okay.
Yeah, random generation.
Just an index. Yeah. I just need an index. Take the random generator, call its next int method. Where are you here? This one. And in this, I'll say, what was my array list called? Response something. Default responses. Thank you. And size. Remember the size method tells you the size of your array list. So what does next int do? Gives you a random number from 0 to size -1. So my job is done. And what do I return here now? Pick up that default responses. Oh, this is an array list, right? This is an array list. So we'll have to just say, use the get method. Take your default responses. So you have an index now, right? And get the value at index. Job done. Oh, forgot my string. Of course, the return type is missing. Anything else? No, good. Right. So if it cannot find a word in its database or in a hash map that is in your sentence, the question you're asking, all the poor guy does is picks up a default response and gives it back to you. I mean, it has to do something, right? And I made it private because I thought making it private would be better than making it public. You never call the big default response from outside. Doesn't make sense. So we'll keep it private. And so also you should keep the other two methods private. And the two private methods that we still need to create are the fill response back and this one. Okay, and this is just tedious. So I'll kind of write them shorter here. We need to fill these two methods up, right? So there again, I'll keep them private. Doesn't make sense to make them public. What does it do? Return nothing, takes nothing, and does something. Okay, that's one. Okay. So those are the two methods that return nothing and will do something. And that do something is basically, if you look at the name, it says fill my response map and fill my default responses. So it's just putting some values into it. So now there is a whole list you could create, but I'll tell you a couple and the syntax so that you know. So take your response map and put into it a string value pair, right? So put is the method. And again, there is a put all, which says you can convert something that is already a string and so on. For me, put will work because that's what I'm doing, right? So all I'm doing is I'm creating, and again, you just have to, and notice how it says key and value, and it's saying string and string because I declared it as a string pair. You can do anything you want, like any objects will do. Okay, so now you can think of whatever. Suppose I had something like crash, and then I don't know, think of something. Well, it never could be anything, right?
You can ask another question.
Yeah, but you know, the automated system will have to have that question in its database. Yeah, so definitely. So all this is artificial intelligence. It can't ask a question out of, because it's not a human being. So even if you had to ask a question, you will put that question as its value. So if it says something like cache, you could say, tell me something more about the configuration or something like this. Tell me the operating system on your machine. That's a question, right? So any question, anything. You know what I mean? But it will be just a part of this. So I don't know, tell me something, or tell me the operating system you have. So that is a question, right? So all you will do is you will kind of fill this response map up with a few of these options, right? And again, all you have to do is, so please go and look at the put method, sorry, the get and the put method. These are the add and the get method as in your array list, right? Of course, it will be a little different because array list works on indexes and this will work on keys. So there you say get I, where I is an index, and here you will say get a key, like a string, because I have a string, and then that's what it will get. So here I'm only putting it, right? And again, what can you put and so on, out of just from what I remember, definitely these keys have to be unique. You can, if you do not want to replace the value in its value part, you should always check, does it contain the key? Otherwise, it just simply replaces it. If you do not have a partner, if this key is not present, then it returns a null, but it can also happen that the value itself is null. So small things that you should know about the get and the put method, they're simple. There's not a big rocket science. You can, it's not that tough for us. Okay, so something like slow, I don't know. My system is very slow, like, you know what I mean? And you can give something like, maybe your upgrade needs does the hardware need an upgrade? Or what is your hardware configuration, or what is the hardware, right? So you can say, what is your configuration? It's just a string. So who stops you from? And then you can say maybe it needs an upgrade. Right? So your job is just to kind of fill this up with a few response maps.put. Right? For me, I'll kind of copy it from my own code and give it to you and put it on Blackboard. So that way, after the break, we'll have all these responses, right? What do you have to do in the array list? Not a lot different. You only have to fill this up also, right? You just have to fill it up. So your array list was called this default responses. So your array list was called default responses. That was the name of your array list. And what is the method you will use? The add method. And again, you can say something like, I don't know, that sounds odd, or that sounds unreal, God knows. Like, again, I'll fill it up with my, I mean, when you have nothing to say, what do you say? Could you elaborate, please? Right? Again, these are just, and remember, the method in an array list is an add. So there I said put, and here I said add. And it is an array list of strings. So all I do is I add a string. And again, you can choose a little more and add whatever. And again, I have a few on Blackboard. The silly one was this. Many people will say it on a manual system also. If you're talking to somebody, they'll say, that sounds interesting, tell me more. That's a response I've heard even on face-to-face here. So I'll add this. I'll add a few on Blackboard, okay? I'll give you these two files before we do the system. And that's it. That's it for the responder. Right, so what does the responder basically do? Responder's main job is to take your set of words, look for those words, search them in its database. For me, it's a hash map right now. So if you wanted to make it more bigger, all you will do is you'll put your data in a database, right? And then pick up the word, find its response, and return it to you. If it cannot find a response, and that can happen, though the chances are less if you've created a good system, but you always have a backup. So your default responses is a backup. So for backup, you have it. All you have to do is just pick up randomly. And that's what I did. Remember here I said pick default response. Find a random number and pick up anything randomly. Yes.
Now just to confirm,
yeah.
These, for those population
methods
that you designed, we could also populate these out of a separate file, right?
Oh yes, yes. Oh yes, yes. You can do whatever you like. Like, as I said, you could be using a database. Maybe you have a file of responses and you're populating it. You just have to find the right method to do it. Right? Definitely. You would most probably not do it like this by putting and putting, right? But the responses have to be placed somewhere, even if you put it in a file, and then we can copy it. So all you have to choose is the right method, right? So what I'll do is we'll take a break here, and I'll put the complete, not the complete. It's just I have more responses and more. In both the methods, I just have a few more so that when we test the system, we have a little more. I'll just put that on Blackboard and you can come and just copy it down. That is, the input file is not that different. So just take a break of 15-20 minutes, whatever you like, and then come back. And by that time, let me just on your weekly learning. put it under Thursday, and then I'll just, when I'm complete, I'll do it for them also. And I'll copy it too. I need to copy it too. So I'll just browse it and I'll give you my file. So the reader you already have, like, anyway. I mean, this is with the comments. Let me do it. This is with the comments. So that way at least you have it. So I'll put this now. I mean, I can put all of them. I don't think you're going to look at it or whatever up till way back, but anyway. So just the responder so that, and the tester is an easy one. The tester basically will create a tech support system and say start. What else can it do, right? So we'll come back. You can do this. You can just download it and copy and paste it from there, okay? And then I'll come back and we'll finish it off.